Good evening and welcome to the 2021 edition of the Wine Vault and Bistro Guigal dinner. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Patrick Will. I'm a vice president at Vintus, and Vintus is the national importer for the wines of Guigal, and I'm very pleased to be able to provide some wines for your enjoyment this evening from this renowned producer in the Rhone Valley of France. My job is to take you through a little bit of the background of the vineyards and the winery, and to talk about the wines and the pairings this evening. And I want to jump right into that without any delay, but you'll have to bear with me for just a moment while I invoke the magic of Zoom and share my screen briefly. And we'll get to some slides, some pictures, and some illustrations of what it is I am talking about. So if you will bear with me momentarily, we shall be moving this straight along, and voila, there we are. So once again, welcome. This is the second edition of this dinner, by the way. In 2020, we did much the same thing about the same time last year. And I want to welcome those of you who attended that. Welcome back. Nice to see you again. And those who are new to this evening, welcome and nice to meet you. We would like to thank particularly Chris, Mary, and Chef Josh at Wine Vault and Bistro. Thanks for having us here. Thanks for inviting me into your home and these wines into your restaurant. And we'd like to thank all of you for joining us this evening at this dinner. The menu looks spectacular, and I'm fairly confident that the wines will live up to that challenge. So a little bit of background about the Rhone. Let's move into some photographs to illustrate where we are. This is, as I mentioned, that we have a fabulous menu paired with these wines from Guigal. This is the Chateau d'Ampuis that you're looking at. It's the Chateau of Ampuis, with Ampuis being the town, which is really the home base for the Guigal family and the Guigal winery. It's in the northern Rhone, in fact, the northernmost wine-producing region of the Rhone Valley. And it is, you can see right there, it's situated at the base of the hills of Côte-Rôtie. This is not where the winery is. This is actually part of the Guigal family lives in this wonderful architectural edifice that they own and they restored. It's a historic landmark, and it has become emblematic essentially of the Guigal firm. The Guigals have their cellar in Ampuis about 4 blocks away, and they have been there since their founding in 1946. A little bit of background about the region, however. The Rhone River is a important waterway in France, and it runs out of Lake Geneva in Switzerland and flows through the foothills, joining forces with the Saône River right around what is now the city of Lyon. It takes a southward course after that, flows through the very, very narrow northern Rhone Valley, and then as it opens out into the southern Rhone, into the alluvial plain of the southern Rhone and Provence, it makes its way to the Mediterranean. The Rhone River is very important because it was an important part of commerce. It was a trade route in the 500, 600, 800 BC. It became very important for the Greeks as they explored this part of France, which was at that time called Gaul, and then later for the Romans. And the Romans were really instrumental in setting up the commerce, the agriculture, and the viticulture throughout the Rhone Valley and throughout much of France, I would say. They also established viticulture in the Loire Valley, and there's remnants of the Roman ruins up in the Loire. And of course, in Bordeaux, they were very important, establishing, among other things, the city of Saint-Emilion, which predates the Medoc, the very famous wine-producing regions of Bordeaux, by hundreds and hundreds of years. So they were extremely important throughout France and what was Gaul, as I mentioned. But since we're talking about the Rhone, we'll talk about what they established there. And you're going to see evidence of Roman viticulture throughout our talk this evening. This, what you're looking at, is the Pont de Garde, which is an aqueduct that the Romans built. This is in the appellation called Costières-Nîmes. It's just a little bit west of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. But there's evidence that this is spectacular, but there's evidence like this of their settlements and their developments all over the Rhone. And it's a fascinating part of the history of the region. They brought their own grape varieties to the region, by the way. We don't know if those were in particular anything that we have left today. Syrah is indigenous to the Rhone Valley, so the Romans probably did not bring it in, but suffice it to say, they did bring some of their own varieties, and those may have died out for one reason or another, but we do have evidence that the viticulture was sophisticated, and they were able to export a lot of the production commercially along the Rhone River, and really developed it as an important part of viticultural France. Here is the Rhone itself, a little bit of background about the geology of the Rhone, or the geography, I should say, geology as well. Just above the little town of Vienne at the top, if I can get my pointer going here, right up here. If you go a little further north, you'll see the city of Lyon. It's not on this map, but that marks the northern part of the Rhone Valley. And what we're talking about, Northern Rhone and Southern Rhone, we're going to tour both regions with our wines this evening. The Northern Rhone is basically runs from Côte-Rôtie all the way down to Cornas and Saint-Péray. So from Vienne to Valence there, if you will, there's very little viticulture in the middle. And then you transition from the Northern Rhone, which is a continental climate, being an area that has 4 distinct seasons: summer, fall, winter, and spring. You transition from a continental climate into the Southern Rhone, which is a Mediterranean climate. Mediterranean climates generally less distinct seasons, more sunshine, longer growing season, and more warmth. And you find that reflected in the wines. I think you will in the wines that we're having this evening. So to the first wines of the evening in a moment, but we'll get to the Guigal family background very briefly. This is Etienne Guigal. He was the founder of the winery in 1946. He landed in the town of Ampuy, actually, when he was 14 years old, looking for work, and found work at a firm called Vidal Fleury. And they hired him basically to work piecemeal in the vineyards, tying up vines, pruning vines, and so forth. He managed to work his way as a young teenager, as he worked there for many years, all the way up to cellar master, and then finally general manager of the entire operation. After World War II, he left Vidal Fleury to found his own company, as I said, in 1946, and the rest is history, as you might say. This is a picture of the cellars back in the 40s and 50s, a very typical French cellar. It looks like an underground train station, essentially, and full of barrels. I don't know who the two people are, one offering to pour some wine into this other gentleman's tasse de vin, but in any event, you can clearly see with the CR on the labels, on the barrels over here, excuse me, that there are barrels of Côte-Rôtie in the cellar. And in any event, fast forward to the next 2 generations. And this is, I should point out, a multi-generational family company, and securely so, I should add, very, very successful, arguably the most successful winery in France. In the middle there, you see Marcel Guigal, the only child of Etienne and Etienne's wife. And Marcel took over for his father at age 17 when his father fell ill. His father got better, but the 2 of them ran the winery side by side from there on in. And then on the far right, you see Philippe Guigal, the little bit of a widow's peak there. Philippe is about 10 years older than when that picture was taken. Philippe is now really in charge of the winery, along with his father and some other very distinguished winemakers who are helping them run the operation, which has become quite large. Etienne, you can still see that cask with Etienne's carving in it. Etienne passed away in 1989. Marcel and Philippe are still with us, thankfully, and they are running a winery which has been modernized, as you can see from this picture of the cellar, and very clearly, a modern cellar with new barrels. This is one of about 6 barrel cellars they have in the winery, and it is a beautiful operation. If you've ever been there, you know what I'm talking about. Quite substantial now, producing an important amount of wine from all parts of the Rhone Valley. And I should point out the Guigals are both estate owners, particularly in the north and in the south, and throughout the rest of the Rhone. They also act as negociant, purchasing wines and then blending and aging them in their cellars as well. And we'll see the fruits of that as we get along through the evening. Tonight's wines, we have 4 wines to go with this lovely dinner. And I'm going to talk a little bit about something about the first 2 in a second, but because they're related. This is the first wine of the evening, the Côte du Rhône Rosé. But let me say a little bit of something about the Rhone Valley and the focus in terms of wine varieties. And I'm not talking grape varieties, but wine varieties. The Rhone is known for red wine. If you even get to take a look at the Inter-Rhone, which is the promotional arm of the Rhone Valley in France, they promote the Rhone by saying, think red, think Côte du Rhône. And in fact, the production of the Rhone Valley is about 94% red wine. So why are we drinking rosé? Well, the Rhone also produces, but in small quantities, beautiful rosés and beautiful white wines, particularly. And Guigal is a specialist in both. And I think once you taste the wines, you'll understand what I'm saying. This wine in particular is being paired with a smoked salmon frittata with capers, dill, and red onion, which ought to be a perfect pairing for it. This wine has a lot of spice, a lot of richness, but also good acidity without being a kind of shrill rosé, which some can be. There's plenty of flesh on the bones of this rosé, which, as you can see, is constructed from approximately 70% Grenache, 20% Cinsault, and 10% Syrah. This is a cute picture that I put together to advertise the fact that they have a new bottle for this, and you can see this particular and unique bottle shape is a recent construct from a famous glass company in France that Guigal's worked with to produce this. It creates a little bit of a striated swirl image on the inside of the bottle, and not on the outside. You can't feel it, but once you start to empty the bottle, you begin to see it appear, and it creates quite a nice effect. Nice way to start the evening and pairing with the food. So moving on, and I should point out when we get the next wine we also have is Côte du Rhône. And I should point out now that the Côte du Rhône itself, the phrase Côte du Rhône means just the hillsides of the Rhône Valley. And that is the designation for essentially the regional appellation of the Rhône. What I mean by that is it is essentially, if you think of the appellations as a pyramid with the most basic wines at the bottom producing the, representing the largest production in the Rhône. And as you get more and more specific through Côte du Rhône Village and up to the crus such as Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Gigondas, Crozes-Hermitage, production gets smaller. The pyramid is a pyramid. It narrows as you get toward the top. And we're talking about the basic wines of the Rhône Valley with Côte du Rhône. And there's a lot of different ones. There's a lot of different levels of quality. Guigal has specialized in this category. Their feeling is that if you're likely to run into one of their wines, it will be one of their Côte du Rhônes, the red, the white, or the rosé. And their feeling is they have to make these very, very well. They have to make them better every year and keep the quality at a very high level. A rosé, I hope, demonstrated that for you. If you've ever had the red Côte du Rhône, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's a very high quality wine, especially for the price. And now we're talking about one of the specialties of the house, the Côte du Rhône Blanc. This was almost reinvented by Marcel Guigal. It was generally Côte du Rhône Blanc tends to be kind of a so-so wine, slightly flabby, not terribly interesting, a lot of flesh, but not a lot of liveliness. Excuse me as I have a sip of water. But this was really reinvented by Marcel Guigal as a category because he started to include a lot of Viognier in the blend. Now, Viognier is a grape variety that is indigenous to the northern Rhône in the appellation of Condrieu. Very, very limited, very small production, not very well planted around France. And Marcel began to encourage growers to plant it in the south because he loved it in the northern Rhône vineyards of Condrieu. And he began to increase the quantity of Viognier in this blend. And now it stands to be about 60% of the blend here. I beg your pardon. So what you have with this is a very aromatic wine, rich on the palate, complex, has a lot of perfume, and it's being paired with a chicken salad, togarashi, seasoned chicken breast, rice noodles, and green onions and cabbage. It should be a perfect pairing. I beg your pardon, I have a little bit of allergy, so that's why I'm having a little bit of a cough as we go through this. Moving on. And the white, I should point out, is a rich blend. This is a typical Southern Rhône blend. Well, maybe not so typical as I just mentioned, but it's a blend of Southern Rhône varieties, mostly with Viognier taking the lead. And it is Viognier, Roussanne, Claret, Bourbon, and Grenache Blanc, approximately those percentages. And what I'm showing you there is a picture of the vineyard, typical vineyard in the south, prune to Gobelets pruning. And the soil, as you can see there, is very challenging to farm. That's a lot of river stones, and much of the Southern Rhône was formed by the alluvial action of the Rhône River itself, which washed lots and lots of stones and sand and clay down from the north as it flowed downstream. And that's what left it on this wonderful big plain of the south. To the third wine of the evening, this is 2017 Gigondas. Beautiful wine paired with New Orleans style andouille sausage, smoked chicken gumbo kit. I guess you have to prepare this and put this together yourself. So while you're doing that, have a good glass of Gigondas to fortify yourself for the work you're about to do. The Gigondas is a wonderful appellation in the South. It only has existed since the early 70s. It was given appellation status in about 1973. The Guigals were purchasing wines from this area, which is quite near to Châteauneuf-du-Pape in the South, in order to blend into their Côte d'Arones for many years. And when it became an appellation itself, they began to bottle it on its own as Gigondas. And it's a wonderful, what I call it, a comfort food of a wine. It is a typical Southern Rhone blend, classic Southern Rhone blend with Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre in the percentages you see there. And again, typical of Southern Rhone viticulture, this is prune to Gobelets pruning. And you will find this to be smoky and meaty and very, very rich, quite a bit of tannin, and it should be perfect to offset the heat in the andouille sausage and the gumbo. And I think especially with the tannin, it will cut the richness and the sort of fattiness of that dish extremely well. So a very nice pairing. I hope it works well for you, and I hope you enjoy it. And to the last wine of the evening, we have our first foray into the Northern Rhone. Now we've moved back to the north, a little south of where the Guigal's cellars are, but nonetheless within striking distance there. And this is the appellation known as Crozes Hermitage. It is so named because the appellation is it's actually surrounding the famous hill of Hermitage itself, which is one of the most famous vineyards in all of the Rhone. Crozes Hermitage are slightly lesser vineyards, but nonetheless very fine vineyards. Here you see terraces. These are actually right on the north side of the hill of Hermitage itself. And this is a wonderful appellation, especially in the northern vineyards. Guigal uses grapes only from terraced vineyards, and also vineyards that are planted on a granitic soil type, which works extremely well for the grape variety that is featured in this wine, which is, drum roll please, Syrah. And 100% Syrah makes up Crozes Hermitage Rouge. And we have a beautiful example, I think, of typically Northern Rhone Syrah, which smoky with a note of bacon fat. It really is an ideal introduction to the Northern Rhone character that is so unique to the Syrah grape up there. And we have the 2018 vintage, which is really plush, really quite full, and I think very, very appealing. In the context here with beef bourguignon with whipped potatoes, I don't know if you could find a better wine for a combination there. So I do hope that you enjoy that. In the background, you can see some of the terraces there on the photograph. This is fairly typical of the Northern Rhone, whereas opposed to these alluvial plains that you see, the Northern Rhone and the South, the Northern Rhone has these old terraces, and you can see that you could probably make a case that these were built 2,500 years ago, and indeed they were. Still in use today, and this is the type of vineyard that these grapes are grown on. Very difficult to farm, but producing intense, very enjoyable wines that can last a great deal of time. So those are the four wines. Those are the four courses you have this evening. I certainly hope that you're enjoying these. I do want to take a moment again and thank Chris, Mary, and Chef Josh again, and thank Wine Vault and Bistro for having us as part of your evening tonight. And thank all of you for joining us. There's the Chateau d'Ampuis in all its glory. And I'm going to stop the share for just a moment and bid you adieu. And in the process, I should have had this so I would get over my cough quicker. But in any event, this is the 2018 Crozes Hermitage Rouge. I want to toast to all of you. Thanks again for joining us. Lovely evening, lovely dinner, and